My foster brother Damien said my partner and stepdaughter clashed with the aesthetic of his wedding after I gave him the venue. So I sent mechanical birds to sing all his elitist quotes mid-ceremony. He just stood there, frozen. I should have seen it coming. That's what kept playing in my head after the call. My name is Riley. I'm 39 years old, based in Portland, Oregon, and I build eco-conscious homes for a living. Last year, I finished a 3-year solo project, a custom, zero-impact house nestled on 5 forested acres in the Columbia Gorge. And I gave it away. To Damien. He's not my biological brother, we both aged out of the same group home, then clung to each other like desperate little satellites. He got adopted at 12 by some wealthy PR executive. I bounced around until emancipation. Still, we stayed in touch. More than that, I practically raised him in some ways. So when Damien and his fiancé, Levi, got engaged and started talking about an editorial forest wedding, I offered them the house as a gift. A real wedding present. Not just the property, but the ceremony too, everything from the caterers who specialize in edible flowers, to the avant-garde florist who practically sculpted the forest floor into a living altar. They wanted lush but aloof. Unfolding mythology meets vintage couture. It was absurd, but also fun. And Damien was beaming for once, softer, like he used to be. That lasted until the night before the wedding. My phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. I was on the couch, braiding my stepdaughter Evie's hair while my partner, Jonah, prepped tea in the kitchen. "Hey, Damien said. He sounded out of breath, or maybe anxious. "Listen, I need to talk to you about tomorrow." "Everything okay?" A pause. "So, the visuals are really locked in. We just finalized the editorial flow with the photographer team. And Levi and I, well, we realized something." I said slowly. "It's just. Jonah and Evie don't really fit the visual story." I blinked. "What?" "The theme is elevated wilderness intimacy, right? And it's a feature shoot. A visual story about elite love." He rushed through the words like if he said them fast enough I wouldn't fully register the meaning. I waited. Silence. "You understand, right?" he added. "It's about the aesthetic." I stared at the blank TV screen in front of me, Evie humming softly under my arm. "Of course," I said. "I get it." He let out a relieved breath, thanked me, hung up. I didn't move for a while. Inside, I was already planning. Planning how to repay that kind of erasure. Because this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about the final proof that no matter what I gave, I'd always be the prop, never the picture. Well, if Damien wanted a visual story, I'd give him one. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I didn't sleep, really, just lay there in the dark with Jonah breathing softly beside me, my mind racing through 20 years of tiny humiliations like it was scrolling a photo reel. I got up, padded into the kitchen, and sat at the table. Our kettle was still warm. I made tea but didn't drink it. Instead, I opened an old photo album. Damien and me, teenagers at some community arts event. I had purple box braids and a knockoff canvas jacket I'd practically lived in. He was skinny and slick-haired, leaning into me like I was the only thing holding him up. He used to call me rye bread. Said I made everything feel full. That version of him had vanished a long time ago. The memory that stuck, though, the one that clawed its way forward, was from a gala we went to about 6 years back. It was one of those rooftop things in Manhattan. I'd flown out last minute because Damien said it would mean the world if I came. I borrowed a black jumpsuit from Jonah's friend who worked in wardrobe. When we arrived, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, just FYI, if anyone asks, Jonah is kind of your rebellious co-op phase, right?" Then he laughed and sipped champagne like it was nothing. I remember standing there, jaw tight, watching him introduce Jonah to some editorial director as my cultural detour. Another flash, Evie, maybe 8 at the time, had made him a watercolor card for his birthday. It had lavender and foxes on it. Damien had smiled, thanked her, slid it under a wine glass at the bar, and forgot about it. I found it there, soggy and warped, 30 minutes later. So yeah, the wedding snub wasn't new. It was just finally blatant enough to feel undeniable. I picked up my phone and scrolled until I found the number. "Hey, Jules," I said when she answered. "It's Riley." "Long time." "Riley Holt?" "As I live and breathe," she laughed. I was just thinking about that installation we did with the fake subway turnstiles and the megaphone loops. You still raising hell? Something like that, I said, rubbing my temple. I have a favor. Name it. I have a canvas for you, I said. And it's a wedding. Silence. Then, a slow inhale. Oh. You mean that wedding? Yup. And you want, what, exactly? I want to give him the feature he asked for, I said. But on my terms. A beat. Then a delighted laugh. Oh, Riley, Jules said, voice thick with wicked glee. Send me the specs. Let's make art. I hung up and finally took a sip of my tea. It was cold, but that didn't matter. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to earn Damien's love. I was done shrinking to fit his frame. Now? I was curating my own frame. And I knew exactly what to put in it. The ceremony was set for 4:30 p.m., golden hour. Very on brand for Damien, soft light, long shadows, everything perfectly curated to look effortless. The forest had been transformed. Paper lanterns floated between cedar trunks. A floral arch rose like a sculpture from the moss-covered ground, with orchids and preserved eucalyptus curling toward the sky. Indie press photographers milled about with vintage film cameras, trying to look invisible in their wool vests and ironic boots. A drone buzzed overhead, capturing the pre-ceremony ambience. I arrived 10 minutes before showtime. Alone. No Jonah. No Evie. Just me in a black pantsuit, sharp shoulders, no jewelry. Monochrome. Clean. Not a single hint of emotion on my face. Guests looked at me curiously. Some nodded, some didn't. Damien avoided my gaze entirely, which was fine. He had other things to manage, photographers to charm, bow tie angles to adjust. The story must go on. I took my seat in the second row, quietly. I crossed my legs, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. At exactly 4:32, a delivery van rolled down the narrow gravel road leading to the site. A small disturbance, a couple of heads turned. One of the photographers frowned, muttering something about off-schedule logistics. The driver hopped out, wheeled out a massive crate the size of a refrigerator, and parked it directly beside the altar. Gift from the maid of honor, he said loudly, before disappearing back down the path. People whispered. Damien glanced over, confused. His brow furrowed, just a little, before smoothing into practiced calm. Levi leaned in, said something quietly. Damien smiled tightly and nodded. The officiant cleared her throat and began the ceremony. Something about wild hearts and natural roots. Then came the cue. The crate opened with a mechanical click. The top split into petals, unfolding like a bloom. A hush fell over the forest. First came the glitter, biodegradable, of course, in soft waves of gold and ivory. It shimmered in the air, catching the low light like fairy dust. Then the smoke rings, shaped like wedding bands, billowed up in slow motion, drifting toward the tree canopy. People clapped softly, charmed. Delighted. Enchanted. Then came the birds. They weren't real, but they looked close, small mechanical sculptures, about the size of a robin, wings made of laser-cut aluminum and translucent mylar. They flitted out from hidden compartments and perched on branches, blinking and tilting their heads in unison. Then they started to sing. It took a moment for people to realize the melody wasn't a melody at all. It was Damien. His voice, spliced and remixed. Taken from years of podcast interviews, old voice memos, even that audio he sent me when he was pitching a TEDx talk last fall. The birds sang in overlapping layers, phrases looping, glitching, echoing. My image is everything, everything else is just noise. Riley? She means well, but she has a kind of French sensibility. I don't surround myself with mess. That's how I stay elite. People began to shift in their seats. A few chuckled nervously. Damien's jaw was tight. He stood still, one hand frozen mid-gesture. Levi turned toward him slowly, lips parted. The birds kept going. Curate your company, or you lose control of your narrative. I don't owe anyone a seat at my table. Especially if their aesthetic doesn't translate. By now, the glitter had settled. The smoke rings faded. But the birds kept singing. Not loud. Just loud enough. I sat there, serene. Blank-faced. watching the story unfold. This was Damien's wedding, after all. He wanted a feature. A visual story. I just reframed the lens. For a second, nobody moved. The birds chirped on, repeating Damien's stitched-together voice like they were programmed by God herself. The wind didn't blow. The forest stood still. Then, slowly, people started whispering. Not murmuring, whispering. Pointed. Confused. One of the groomsmen shifted his weight like he was deciding whether to run or apologize. Damien's publicist, a girl with bleached eyebrows and a camel trench coat, pulled out her phone and started texting furiously. Behind the altar, the crate shifted again. Another compartment opened, revealing a polished display screen that flickered to life. At first, just a rotating symbol, Damien's personal brand logo, a stylized D and L for Damien/Livingston, his lifestyle design firm. Then it faded into a slideshow of quotes. Real ones. Damien's own interviews, podcast clips, tweets. The source tags floated at the bottom, subtle but damning. My sister's always been kind of fringe. She romanticizes struggle. We're curating a life most people can't understand. It's not exclusion, it's elevation. I love my family, but proximity doesn't equal relevance. Each quote was paired with a photo. One showed him laughing at an influencer brunch, another sipping champagne beside a glacial lake in Patagonia, one more at a podcast mic mid-sentence, lips frozen in smug half-smile. The guests weren't even pretending to pay attention to the ceremony anymore. Levi stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Damien took a sharp step toward the sculpture and hissed, "Turn it off. Now." But Jules had coded it cleverly. It was motion reactive, the more movement nearby, the louder it played. The moment he approached, the bird's volume ticked up just slightly. The quotes began auto-scrolling faster. I saw his jaw flex. His eyes darted toward the tech team. "Cut the power," he snapped. The lead audio guy looked helpless. "It's not on our system," he said. "It's independent." Behind me, someone gasped. Another guest pulled out their phone, probably live streaming. This was no longer a wedding. This was a spectacle. And Damien? He was no longer the architect of it. A guest from Levi's side leaned toward their partner. "Did she really pay for the whole venue?" they whispered. Someone else muttered, "Wait, is that his voice or AI?" Damien turned around, panic under the surface now. His face still wore the PR smile, but it twitched at the corners. "We're having a momentary issue," he said, voice shaking just enough. The officiant stood awkwardly beside the floral arch, like she wasn't sure whether to keep reading or just sit down. Levi looked at Damien. Then at the screen. Then at me. Just a flicker of eye contact. But he knew. He stepped off the platform. Quietly. Without a word. And kept walking. Out of the ceremony. Out of the shot. Out of the narrative. People began to murmur again, not about the quote wall, not about the performance art, but about the actual marriage. The way it was unraveling before it had even begun. Damien tried to speak. Something like, "Please stay seated," or maybe, "This is all being handled." But nobody listened. The forest had fallen silent again, except for the mechanical birds, still singing the truth. Damien stood center stage, or what used to be the altar, clinging to a smile that was losing its structure. The birds were finally quiet now, their tiny mechanical heads frozen mid-tilt. The quote wall had gone black. But the silence wasn't peace. It was exposure. No applause. No cues. Just guests squirming in their seats, wondering whether they were still supposed to clap. I stood up. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just calm. People turned as I stepped forward, heels quiet against the pine needles. I walked up to the edge of the altar, stopped just beside Damien, and took the mic from its stand like I was giving a toast. He didn't stop me. He didn't move. "Hey," I said, my voice smooth but full. "I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for coming." A few confused nods. I looked out at the guests, the editors, the stylists, the handful of mutual friends. Damien asked for a story, I continued. He said it was a visual narrative about elite love. And he was right. My eyes flicked to him, just briefly. But every story has layers. What you saw today wasn't sabotage. It was honesty. A ripple went through the crowd. No one interrupted. I've given Damien a lot, I said. I gave him this house, the one we're standing in. I funded this wedding. Paid for the food, the foliage, the fashion. And I did it all because I believed in who we used to be. Damien flinched slightly. Still didn't speak. But yesterday, he told me my family wasn't welcome. Because we clashed with the aesthetic. I let that sit. A few people looked toward the back, where the media crew had been. The cameras were still rolling. So I decided, I said, if we're curating stories, I'll curate mine too. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a cream envelope, thick, unmarked, sealed in wax. I'm here to return the final wedding gift, I said, holding it up. It's a transfer of deed. Damien's eyes snapped toward the envelope. Effective immediately, I said, the house no longer belongs to Damien or Levi. Gasps now. Real ones. I've donated the property, the structure, the land, all of it, to an organization that houses displaced teen artists. Starting Monday, it becomes a live-in residency program. Someone clapped, stunned and awkward. Damien stepped forward, grabbing the mic. You can't do that, he said, voice cracking. This was a gift. Illegal. Not yet filed in your name, I said gently. I held the paperwork. You never signed. He looked like he might lunge. His hand hovered near the mic again. But I stepped back. The cameras were still rolling. You wanted a legacy, I said. Now you have one. I placed the envelope on the edge of the altar and turned. I wish you all a lovely evening. And I walked off the stage. Not fast. Just free. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Clips of the wedding performance hit social media before the last guest even made it back to their Airbnb. A micro-influencer posted a reel titled, When the Maid of Honor Becomes the Main Character. It got 50,000 views in under 2 hours. By day 2, it had its own hashtag curated collapse. Art blogs picked it up first. Modern Rights called it a brutalist satire disguised as a gift. Another site, one that normally reviewed performance spaces, ran a headline that read, The forest was quiet. Then it spoke. The birds were the breakout stars. People posted slowed-down clips of them singing Damien's own words back to him, layered with piano music and captions like, When ego meets installation. By Thursday, Damien was a meme. A screenshot of his stunned face at the altar was overlaid with the quote, I curated myself out of love. His Instagram went private by Friday. Then came the press calls. Not to him, to me. Everyone wanted a statement, an interview, an artist's commentary. I said nothing. I declined every request, turned down podcasts, ignored DMs from mutuals who suddenly found me iconic. I wasn't interested in turning this into content. I hadn't done it for followers. I did it because the truth deserved to be louder than the lie. Jonah and Evie saw the clips too, of course. Jonah sent me one late that night with just 3 words, You're a legend. Evie had drawn one of the mechanical birds in watercolor. She gave it to me the next morning with a little heart that said Sing Your Truth. Meanwhile, Damien's brand tanked. The consulting firm that once bragged about his minimalist taste quietly dropped his name from their roster. His podcast sponsors backed out, one by one. He posted a statement, the classic Notes app apology, but the damage was already done. The man who built a career on control lost it in one curated weekend. And me? I didn't say a word. No interviews. No comments. No victory lap. Just silence, the kind that finally felt like peace. It had been 3 months since the wedding. 3 months of quiet mornings, slow coffee, and projects that felt like mine again. Jules had gone back to Berlin. Jonah was working on a greenhouse sketch with Evie, who was currently obsessed with planting magic. Life was soft. Still. Stable. Then Damien showed up. I saw him through the window first, standing outside the co-op design studio where I worked 2 days a week. He looked smaller. The Damien I knew would have filled the doorway with a signature smirk and some avant-garde jacket. This version wore a wrinkled button-down and scuffed shoes. No designer scarf. No sunglasses. Just a man who hadn't slept. I opened the door. Hey, he said, voice thin. Hey. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The space smelled like sawdust and turmeric. Someone had been cooking lunch in the back kitchen. I wasn't sure you'd let me in, he said. I almost didn't, I said. Why are you here? He glanced around, eyes lingering on the large reclaimed wood table in the center of the studio. It was covered in sketches, scraps of muslin, and a cracked mug that said property of the Dirtbag Collective. I've lost everything, he said finally. Levi's gone. Sponsors, clients, it's like no one wants to touch me. I didn't say anything. I thought maybe I could help out here. Intern, assistant, whatever. He exhaled. I just need somewhere to start over. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Why here? I asked. He looked up, and I could see it then, the desperation. Not remorse. Not clarity. Just panic. Because, he said, no one else will take me. Not, because I understand now. Not, because I see what I did. Just, because I'm out of options. I nodded slowly. That's honest, I said. But not enough. He flinched, just slightly. You said I didn't fit your aesthetic, I added. You erased my family to protect your narrative. And now you want in on a space you spent years looking down on? He swallowed hard. I'm trying. No, I said gently, you're surviving. He stood there, silent. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But this place, these people, it's not a rehab center for burned-out egos. His eyes welled a little, but he didn't cry. You really won't help me, he whispered. I am helping, I said. I'm saying no. For once, he didn't argue. Just nodded. Backed out of the room slowly like someone retreating from a space they never understood. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. It was late spring when things started to feel normal again. Not the old normal, not the version of life where I bent to keep peace or swallowed small betrayals like vitamins. This was something quieter. Earthier. Better. We were building a greenhouse in the backyard. Jonah was handling the structure, cedar frames, repurposed windows from a demo site. Evie and I handled the dirt, the seeds, the labels. She was obsessed with naming everything. This one's for courage, she said one afternoon, carefully pressing a seed into a mound of soil. And this one's just for vibes. I laughed. A vibes plant. Got it. Music played low from the kitchen window, something warm and lo-fi, the kind of playlist you forget to pause because it fits the moment too well. Jonah came out with lemonade, sleeves rolled up, neck smudged with dirt. He looked tired in the good way, the way people do when they've been building something they actually care about. Evie looked up at me suddenly. Will Uncle Damien ever visit us again? I paused, trowel still in my hand. She wasn't angry when she asked. Just curious. Like she was flipping through the pages of a book and wanted to know if that character came back. I looked at the little pot she'd just planted, her tiny marker stuck in the soil. Courage. Maybe, I said. If he wants to. But will we let him? I smiled. Some plants, I said, gently patting the soil, just don't take root. Evie nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. And that's okay, I added. We went back to planting. The sun started its slow dip toward the trees. The greenhouse glowed in patches, half shadow, half gold. Inside, the kitchen timer dinged. Jonah called out, "Dinner's ready." We brushed off our hands and went inside. It was nothing big. Pasta. Fresh bread. A salad Jonah chopped with that ridiculous knife he refuses to sharpen properly. We ate together at the table, barefoot and content, the world outside softening into dusk. No cameras. No performance. No aesthetic. Just family. The kind I chose.